Hi, everybody. This is the Brooklyn in the 2010s podcast. This is another episode. Today, I'm going to talk about a place that was in North Brooklyn called the Third Ward. I want to talk about this because a lot of you probably never heard of the Third Ward. It never really got nationally known. It probably was not really even a household name in Williamsburg or Greenpoint or Bushwick at the time it existed. But I think it's important to talk about because it really says its timeline and what it was and what it did for people really says a lot about Brooklyn in the 2010s. So what was the Third Ward? Well, that's hard to say. It was kind of like a school, kind of a studio for different types of artists and craftspeople. It was sometimes a venue for art or for that's primarily the three things it was. Okay. So it was on Morgan Avenue in kind of the intersection of Bushwick and Williamsburg in what was at the time in the beginning of the 2010s a mostly industrial area. It was actually, I think, formerly called the East Williamsburg Industrial Park. This was an area of a few blocks, kind of roughly from the Morgan Avenue exit on the Brooklyn Queens Expressway to I want to say Grand Avenue, Grand and Morgan Avenue, where they intersected. Was that Grand Street? Anyway, it was around the Bushwick, Williamsburg area. Sometimes it was called East Williamsburg, sometimes called Bushwick. There was a big controversy around that because a lot of people felt that the East Williamsburg moniker for this area was only adopted because Bushwick still had a reputation for violence. So it was this big building that had probably been some kind of manufacturing area or light industry. There were a lot of buildings like that around there in that area. They sometimes had various industries in them. Like nearby, there was, I remember, a pillow factory. Sometimes they were warehouses, sometimes storage facilities. You would also have various craftsmen, like, let's say, people making stairs or woodworkers, supply yards for large construction companies. This is the kind of business that had traditionally been there. And then, of course, you'd have like mechanics for trucks because there were a lot of trucks around there. What else? Lumber yards. I remember there was one nearby, actually a few in Maspeth. Very, very industrial area around there. So the Third Ward, I believe, had started sometime in the mid 2000s, like 2006, 2007. And some of young creatives, hipsters, whatever you want to call it, had started utilizing this old industrial building for various purposes. I think I heard they used to have parties there. Um, and then gradually they started repurposing it. And it had a wood shop. It had like a metalworking area. It had rooms for photography, for computers, um, and various classrooms. So that's kind of the way it was around 2010 when I first started going there. I had heard about it through Craigslist, and I, like maybe a lot of people, was kind of, in my 20s and searching for something, like something that was going to point me in a certain direction. Wasn't really sure exactly what my career was going to be, but I saw it in something related to woodworking, painting, things like that. But where I came from, it just, I wasn't really sure how to get into any of those industries. And it just seemed kind of daunting, kind of intimidating if, I didn't have any connections to that line of work. I didn't know anything about it. It'd be really taking a big risk to, quit whatever I was doing to make money and jump into a new trade or craft or art full time. But when I found out about Third Ward, all these doors opened up, because not only could I take classes in woodworking or painting or finishing, but now I could meet other people doing the same thing who were looking to link up with other people looking for education in the trades and crafts and art. And also there were actual working professional artists and woodworkers there. It was especially the wood shop was fairly large, and there were maybe 5 or 6 full-time woodworkers there from day to day. I don't remember exactly, but it had all the machinery. It had large table saws. It had joiners. It had planers, band saws. So it was there. So you start taking classes there, and they're taught by people who have been in the business, have been in the industry. They're there to make some extra bucks, but you're asking them questions. You're learning from them, and you're learning about what their life is like. I remember seeing the woodworkers there, and for the first time, seeing what their day-to-day life was like. How do they make money? Do they make a lot of money? Is some impression of what it was like to work in these jobs, because I had no knowledge of it before. And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the other people who were going to Third Ward felt the same way. It was a lot of other people that I met who were also in their 20s, who were not natives to that area of Brooklyn, or even Brooklyn in general. I don't even think I remember meeting anybody, as far as the people taking classes and purchasing studio time, who were from that part of Brooklyn, to tell you the truth. They seem to fit into what I've described as the people who were often wanting to move to Brooklyn at that time. 20s, creative, interested in the arts, generally white, and often from outside of New York City. And it it just shows a lot of what made Brooklyn great that was going on in a place like this. You're finding a place to get an education where there probably wasn't schools or training for these things anywhere else, or at least anywhere else that I knew of, where that was so accessible, because you could pay for the class, you could pay for a year membership, you could pay for studio time. Okay, so eventually that's what I did. I took the intro to woodworking course, and that allowed me to work in the wood shop there. That allowed me to meet other people looking to learn woodworking. That allowed me to meet professional woodworkers. And that was my first entrance into the industry. So Third Ward really opened up a lot of these doors for me. And I was able to explore other things too. Like I remember I was like, well, they have a watercolor painting class, so I'll take that just for the hell of it. And maybe I'll learn something too. They had a class on color theory. And I remember in that class, I'm there trying to better understand painting, trying to understand colors for woodworking. And there were actually other people in the class. There were two women I remember who were hairstylists. So they were learning color theory to better themselves in dyeing hair and styling hair, how different colors work together. And let's say you were working on a table or something, and for some reason it needed metal in it. Well, you could go right across from the wood shop to the metal shop, and you'd find somebody who could help you. Networking was being done, and people were building things for the future. Now, I don't know, I don't believe there were many other places like this in Brooklyn. Third Ward was pretty much the most well known. I remember there was another place in Gowanus, which I believe also closed down. I forget the name of it. But Third Ward was the most well known, and there were a lot of people there. Like the woodworking intro to woodworking classes. I mean, they had a lot of people. Often you didn't really learn too much. Like it wasn't thorough because it was kind of difficult to teach those classes. Like you're showing somebody how to use the table saw. It's kind of a one-on-one thing, and if you're not the person being instructed, then you kind of start looking around, daydreaming. You got to wait your turn. So it wasn't perfect in that regard, definitely not. You got an overview, all right? And if you decided to go forward in this type of life, in the creative life, in art, you could make the necessary connections and get enough of an overview to decide if you wanted to go further. So in that way, it opened up so many doors, and I believe not just for me, but for so many people. And within 2 years, I had developed the necessary connections and education to move on myself. So I started going there in 2010. Like I said, things were kind of up in the air for me. I still didn't have a career. I took a lot of classes at Third Ward. I got the yearly membership. And by 2012, Um, Me and a bunch of other people, I don't want to call them alumni, but they were people who had also gone to Third Ward. We all got a shop nearby. There was a wood shop that was nearby because we were making moves by that point. By, like, 2011, we were all making moves in the industry. A lot of the guys there were already kind of, making this a career. I was still only doing it part time, but it was increasingly becoming my career and my career choice. So, yeah, eventually we got a shop on Van Eyck, which was like a couple blocks away, and we moved on. And it was, eventually that became my the first shop I was working at when I went full time in woodworking in 2013. And so that's really Third Ward. Wanted to talk about it. What a great place it was. I don't know, if the headline here, Third Ward, is going to attract a lot of people. Maybe some people searching for it, want some information about it. Maybe people who went there. It was a great place. I was really shocked. I think it was the next year, like 2013 or so, where I heard that it just suddenly closed down. It was kind of big news at the time. It was actually like in, news for the city. I think it was in like the New York Times and things like that. Because Third Ward had attracted some attention and it was expanding. I think there was plans for something in Philadelphia. There was plans for like a cooking incubator, which was basically going to be a place to train future cooks and chefs. And it all fell through very suddenly. Like I think like there wasn't even advance notice. Like pretty much just one day or one week. Like all of a sudden, like it was like, well, Third Ward is closed, and that was the end of it. Um, and Yeah, I mean, it was shocking for a time. I know there was a lot of controversy around it, but that's what happened, and it had a short life. But yeah, a lot of great things came from it. Also, I forgot to mention, like, kind of like the community aspect of it. It's like, as I mentioned, we're all coming to this place pretty much from other places. We're not from New York City, most of us, especially from Brooklyn, and many of us are just recently arrived, and we're, different places, different accents, different countries, whatever. But like it kind of became like this central place, at least for a lot of people in that area. And there was, they'd have you know events too, like gallery presentations for local artists or traveling artists. I actually helped out with a few of those. And they had sketching, just where people would get together and just sketch, things like that. So there were events too. There was like a big pig roast. I remember something. Yeah, it was a pig roast, and so yeah, there was a community aspect of it too for people from all different areas and who are in their 20s. So that's another aspect of it. So that's pretty much what I got to say right now about it. If you went to Third Ward, if you have questions about it, if you want to talk about it, leave something in the comments. Be great to get a discussion going. And if you like this video, you want to hear more about Brooklyn in the 2010s, hit the like button, subscribe. There'll be more on the way.